The Chicago Blackhawks have found themselves in the middle of one of the most questionable moves this offseason by trading away the 4th overall pick to acquire defenseman Bowen Byram from the Buffalo Sabres. This move sparked immediate backlash from the fan base, including myself, with many calling this a significant overpay for a player that has so much yet to prove. On the surface, this is a no-brainer as to why people are concerned about this move. No one has drafted out of the top 5 since 2008. And it's not a very easy decision for a team to make, especially a team that's still considered to be within a rebuild. But now that more than a week has passed since the trade and reading into the context of it, it's not really a bad move for the Hawks to make right now. And I kind of want to talk about it. Now, I have never made a video like this before, and I've never really given a thought about sitting in front of a camera and talking about Blackhawks hockey, but, this move has been easily the highlight of our offseason, and I kind of want to, throw my 2 cents into it as if I'm adding anything new to it. I just want to have fun and talk about it. All right, let's start off with what we know. At the beginning of the offseason, Kyle Davidson and his team made it clear that their priority was to beef up the blue line. Whether they're going to go out and find veteran talent or find the next cornerstone piece to this rebuild, their priority was trying to find someone to help out on the back end. And that surprised a lot of fans that was their focus. Like myself, a lot of us expected them to go out and find someone to play along Connor Bedard. He is going to enter his 4th year with the team since being drafted, and he still has not had much help on the wings. So before this trade was even made, people were already frustrated with Kyle Davidson and his team. Before there was even a move. So many felt like it was that the team was addressing the wrong areas of their roster. So what was the trade exactly? I'm going to read it off right here. The Chicago Blackhawks acquired defenseman Bowen Byram and forward Jordan Greenway from the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for the number 4 overall pick in the 2026 NHL Draft, the number 45 overall pick in the 2026 NHL Draft, and defenseman Louis Crevier. Now, I remember when that trade was going down. I remember being on Twitter and seeing some hype tweets about, look out for a trade from between the Blackhawks and the Buffalo Sabres. Something big is happening. I remember refreshing Twitter every 5 seconds, seeing something unfold, and I remember seeing that there was a trade happening with Bowen Byram and the 4th overall pick, and my immediate reaction was, I wonder what else is going to be in that trade. As if the 4th overall and Byram were the only things that they could get a little bit of glimpse as to what was happening. My reaction is like, oh my God, there's got to be so much more coming back. And going back and reading this trade out loud, I still remember the feelings I had looking at this and being like, that was it? It's crazy. Clearly, the Blackhawks were aggressive on this move. A lot of people are looking at this and considering it a massive overpay on their end. The 4th overall pick, that just doesn't happen. And seeing Louis Crevier included on that move was a real kick to the stomach. He was one of the bright spots of our season last year, and seeing him go actually sucked. And I'm actually more disappointed in this trade that the Buffalo Sabres, their 21st overall pick didn't come back to us. Okay, let's talk about the 4th overall pick. I was totally breathing in the copium that Stenberg was going to fall to 4. I remember seeing that the Blackhawks dropped 2 spaces and being in complete agony. I wasn't mad that the Leafs jumped to 1. I was mad the Sharks jumped to 2. Now, again, we all were, kind of hoping that Stenberg was going to fall to 4 to us. But after seeing the moves that the Sharks made this offseason, it was very clear that they were going to take Stenberg. And obviously, they should take Stenberg. So, what are the Hawks to do? At that point, it was kind of given that the Canucks were going to pick Malhotra, right? So, the Hawks are pretty much left with picking a defenseman at 4, which is not what they want to do. Whenever you're out of the top 2 picks, everything after that in the first round is kind of an even spread of picks in terms of what those picks will eventually become. I believe it was Frank Saravalli, and I think he's been saying this a lot, that the 4th overall pick isn't as valuable as, we make it out to seem. And it seems like this year's draft, although going into it, I thought was going to be an extremely deep draft. With all the moves that we've seen in this draft, especially in the first round, it doesn't seem like it's as deep as I thought it was going to be. So getting back to it, it's pretty obvious what the Hawks were trying to do. If we're going to pick a defenseman at 4, might as well trade it for someone who's already experienced in the league. Expedite that process. Go get someone that you know can do the job. Because a player like Schaefer is a unicorn in the league. Very rarely do you draft a defenseman that's immediately NHL ready. If we were to pick a defenseman at 4, it would probably be 2 to 3 years before they even crack the NHL ice, and another 2 to 3 years before they're actually starting to get some momentum. And where the Hawks are at right now, they cannot afford to wait. So keeping that 4th pick was kind of a risky move because it's still an unknown asset. Now, what the Hawks got with the 4th overall pick, that's where the problem is. Now, most of the criticism comes down to one single question. Who is Bowen Byram? Byram was drafted 4th overall in the 2019 draft and is currently 25 years old. A lot of people believe that we have just traded away the 4th overall pick for a player who wouldn't be redrafted in that 4th overall position if we did a 2019 redraft. There's legitimate concerns about his health, even though he did complete 2 back-to-back full NHL seasons. And most people think that we already know what we're getting in return. There's no potential investment of what he can become. And that I do completely disagree with. Byram is currently entering the last year of his current deal. And a lot of fans are screaming, if he's really your guy, why didn't you just sign him after this year? Let him play the year in Buffalo and then sign him for free and not have to trade away the 4th overall pick. And I think that's a really bad argument that people are making. That actually doesn't make any sense. And we're going to come back to that. But there's also a lot of positives and upside to this debate. Supporters like myself believe that he has not reached that ceiling yet, and primarily because he's been playing behind elite defensemen from his previous teams. He's played behind Cale Makar, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power. Did he play with Devon Toews? I actually don't know if he played with Devon Toews. I'm not looking it up. But he has never really had the opportunity to be that number 1 defenseman that he wants to be. You can actually just take what I just said and argue, if he has that much upside potential, why is he now moving on to his 3rd team? Why not just, make it work with those teams if he's as good as, I'm trying to advertise it, or I guess KD and the team are making it seem. Now, that is actually a very fair point, and to be honest, I don't have a rebuttal to that. But I like to think it's just a part of the business. People get moved around when they shouldn't be, and sometimes they look for new starts in other places. Again, like I said, instead of drafting another young defenseman at 4, we trade that pick to acquire someone who already has NHL experience to expedite that defensive position. Considering where the rebuild is right now, it doesn't make sense for us to draft another player to wait 4 to 5 years to eventually see what that player is going to become. This team needs change now. Not later, now. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, some of the defensemen that we could have drafted at 4 might have higher ceilings than Bowen Byram. You're right. They might. But we don't know. And I could probably come back to this video, 5-6 years right now and look like a complete idiot. But they're taking a risk, and I think that's something we have to appreciate. They're trying to be aggressive to make change for this team now. I can sense that the Blackhawks believe that by improving the defense that it's going to somehow improve the offense. As I say, defense creates offense. It seems Byram is that kind of player that KD thinks is going to help not only improve the blue line, but improve our offense as well. Someone who can make those turnovers, someone that could be the new quarterback for the power play. And we have seen a lot of upside in Byram's 2, back-to-back full seasons. He has steadily improved every single year. He just had his career year with 42 points. So there's a lot of upside to look forward to with Bowen Byram's his progress. What I find interesting is a lot of criticism contradicts what fans have been saying for a while now. The biggest complaint is that the Hawks need to stop, finishing in the basement, stop selecting high in the draft, stop, accumulating all these prospects and picks, and go out and get actual players. And now the front office finally, makes a move. They trade out of the top 5 and go get someone that they believe is going to help improve this team immediately. And it is met with astonishing backlash. ESPN even graded this trade as an F or a D, I forget. Something terrible. And I see a lot of people going back on what they say and say, oh, they should have kept the pick. What? That doesn't make any sense. You'd rather draft someone at 4 and spend another year in the basement instead of trading it away for someone who actually might help out the team? I thought we're tired of being in the basement. Which is it? But then it introduced the question of like, oh, but the Bowen Byram is the best you can get with the 4th overall pick. Let's talk about what we could have gotten with the 4th overall pick. Is there someone out there that could have been better? We've been talking about the same players all offseason. We've been talking about Nyes, we've been talking about Robertson, and we've been talking about Thomas. Maybe you guys have been in other conversations about, acquiring other players, but those are probably the main three. Now, I have full confidence that Kyle Davidson has done his part and has been super aggressive this offseason to get help for Connor Bedard on the offense. But I don't think we're taking into account what the trade market looks like right now, especially with the rising cap. And things have changed. At one point, Nyes seemed like a possibility. He doesn't really look like an option anymore. It seems that for Matthew Nyes, the least we're asking in return for Frundell and the 4th overall pick, which in my opinion is a much more of an overpay than what we just did to get this defenseman. I don't think we are realistic enough with what's happening behind the scenes. The asking price around the league has been, in general, really high. Byram may represent the best balance for the Hawks in terms of age, talent, cost, and someone who wants to be here long term. Katie knows his limits, and I honestly appreciate that most about him. Yes, we all know what the Blackhawks need. It's so obvious, but it's not like we can just go out there and be like, oh, hey, I want Jason Robertson. Go get Jason Robertson. No, it's just not that easy. Those guys are not options anymore. They're just not. And bringing in Byram not only helps us out, this does make the Blackhawks better, whether you like it or not. It very much does. But this also helps players like Renzel and Leshinov not have to hold on to that number one spot anymore, or at least have that pressure to be that number one guy. This allows them to develop at a better pace than they were without Byram. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is the contract. And like I said before, you can argue, why not get him once he's a free agent? Why are we getting him now? Why not save the 4th overall pick and just pick him up next year? That wasn't going to be an option. It never was. I actually kind of find this super frustrating that people aren't talking about this enough when talking about the Bowen Byram situation. There was a bidding war for him. The Sharks were going to give the 9th overall pick, the 21st overall pick, and a prospect to acquire this player. And Katie knew this was happening, so he threw in Louis Crevier to sweeten the deal, and they took it. If Byram went anywhere else, he would not be coming to the Hawks at any other point in his career. Katie knew who he wanted, he had his guy, and he went out and he got him. And like it or not, you got to appreciate the guy for, being gutsy and getting the player that he thinks is going to help this team the most. And there was no concern on my end when we acquired him that he wasn't going to sign here. Of course, they did their homework and knew, hey, if we're going to trade for this guy, let's make sure he's at least going to sign here. Now, moving on to the new contract. It is a major pay increase, a 100% pay increase. And I'm not being over dramatic saying 100. It is legitimately a 100% increase in pay. 6.25 to 12.5 AAV for 6 years. That makes Bowen Byram the most paid defenseman in the entire NHL, which is a crazy thing to say considering who he is and his resume. This is the part of the conversation where I actually start to agree with most fans. How do you justify giving him that contract? How does he justify asking for that price tag? This is the part I'm most nervous about because it's a big gamble. And this is where it's up to him to prove us right or prove us wrong, depending on how you're looking at it. So that was signed on July 1st, the first day of free agency. And at the time, it was a crazy signing. It was actually signed like very early in the day. But seeing the other moves and signing throughout the day, it seems like that the Hawks were just the first team to get ahead of the new norm. Some fans immediately viewed this as an overpay. It was an overpay to get him, and now it's an overpay to keep him. It's all an overpay, right? The highest paid defenseman in the entire league, it's not going to last long. It's just not. Elliot Friedman rumored that there were a ton of teams interested to get him, and there were a ton of teams interested to actually pay him the way that the Hawks did. There was a team that was ready to give him $14 million AAV for 4 years. And it is speculated that team was the Sharks. Now, I wonder what kind of backlash the Sharks would be getting if they went through with all this. and are actually succeeded in doing all this. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in this player. He possesses something that we do not know, that a lot of teams are willing to go out and get. He's a Stanley Cup champion. I can't believe I'm actually saying that now. He won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche. That's not something that you can teach, is playoff experience. That adds a lot of value to your team. Now, however you want to debate like how valuable he was to that team, it doesn't matter. His name's on the cup. Getting back to the contract, whatever it is, whatever's true, not true, rumored, whatever. What we do know is that a lot of teams wanted to get this player. They clearly valued him highly. And whatever the Blackhawks saw, they believe in this player and they were aggressive to get him. And all that being said is what gives me the optimism that this might work out. These teams have so much more access to advanced analytics, medical history, and just other things they need to know about this player, that I believe that this team was more educated than we think that they were when making this deal. Now, I could totally be sitting here and just speaking out of my ass and not, being realistic about what's happening, but like you have to have a sense of optimism here. Otherwise, the next 8 years are just going to be miserable for you. Now let's talk about the contract. I'm going to circle back to the contract very quickly. Let's assess it, and how it affects the cap, right? So he's currently making $12.5 million for the next 6 years, right? Last year, the cap was around $95.5 million. Next year, in 26-27, it's going to be $104 million. And then by 28-29, that's going to be $113.5 million. Those are all projections. His $12.5 million contract, if that was affecting last year's 25-26 salary cap, which again was at $95.5 million, that affects 13.9% of our cap. Now, when the salary cap goes up to $113 million, that will affect 11% of the cap. That's so his $12.5 million contract in 28-29 is about the equivalent of him signing a 10.5 in 25-26. Now, let's look at Byram and say, is this player worth $10 million in 25-26? And that's where I still say I don't know. That adds into all the doubt that I still have. It's very much the new norm in the NHL where teams are paying for the potential rather than they're paying for what has been proven. So I say all this, all these numbers and stuff, and I'm, to hopefully give some sort of ease of, maybe you're not as upset hearing that, but honestly, reading it out loud doesn't really help me. It's still a gamble. Going from 6 million to 10 million is a huge jump. Now, I think I've pretty much covered all the main talking points, I wanted to cover here. Do I like the move? Yeah. Am I nervous? Yeah. I think it's still a big, it's still a big risk. I'm never going to doubt that it's not a risk, but it's a risk I'm actually willing to take. I'm not going to sit here and give my predictions or sit here and be like, Bowen Byram is going to get 60 points next year. Oh, hang on, you watch it. He's going to be the number one D-man for the next 6 years. I can't make those predictions, and I don't want to, because I'm not looking at it of like, oh, this is it. We're done. We finished everything that we need to do. Did that just go out? That did just go out. But I hope this conversation at least rationalizes everything that's been going on for the last, almost 2 weeks with the Blackhawks. And I get it. Hawks fans are easily startled right now. There's been so much going on, so much comparison to the Ducks, the Sharks, the Canadians, that I think, we're at a point where we're starting to get impatient. And I understand that. I'm starting to get impatient too. But these things take time. The market is changing. I know the staff is doing whatever they can, and they're hitting a lot of dead ends. A lot of luck has to go into this in order to make it work. And I don't think we're hitting a lot of that luck. I don't think the Hawks are done. I certainly don't believe that they're done. It may not happen, this summer. Maybe we'll make a big move in the regular season. But I have faith that this team knows what they're doing. I have patience. I've had so much patience through this rebuild. I'm going to continue to have that patience because it's all we can do, right? I'm not going to be out here demanding for firings or speculating that it's over. Might as well just start all over. There's plenty of time left, and there's a lot of upside. A lot of teams would kill to be in the position that we're in right now with the cap space, the amount of prospects we have in our pool. We're in a good position. I understand that there's now a siren going off that we need to be making some big splashes. They're doing what they can, and we're just going to have to accept everything that's coming our way. So. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you still disagree with everything I said, please let me know. If I'm wrong, if you think I'm just a Kyle Davidson stan and I'm just breathing in the copium, please let me know. I will gladly read it. All right, whatever. Bye.